Hey everybody, it's Janae Wisnett with a Mother's Treasure Painting Studio. Today I'm painting this really cute princess silhouette from Diverse Woodworking. I'm going to start with a base coat of fuchsia across the entire piece. While you're working on that, let me remind you that you can watch this video at your own pace. Don't feel like you need to keep up with me. You can start over or pause and pick back up at any time. As you can see, I'm only giving everything a base coat right now, so there's really nothing much to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward for time's sake. We'll pick back up in just a few minutes. Go ahead and finish your entire base coat. Perfect. There we go. We're finished with the base coat. Now I'm going to pick up my hairdryer and just make sure everything is good and dry before we move to the next step. Okay, now that we're dry, we can move on to the next step. In order to give it the weathered look, we're going to do a technique called dry brushing. For dry brushing, you need a brush that has some really tough bristles that's not going to smooth out the paint as well. And you're not going to need to load your brush very much. You're just going to dab a little bit of it in the black paint. We're going to knock most of that off. Then you're going to sweep that brush gently across the top of your surface. You're going to have a little more pressure in some areas and a little less pressure in other areas. There's no right or wrong. You just want to do it very gently across the surface. And it's called dry brush because you don't want it to be loaded with paint. You want it to have just that hit and miss wispy look. And as you can see, it's starting to turn out very nice. So just go ahead and start this process on your own piece, and we'll catch back up here in a few minutes when we're done. Okay, so now that we've got the weathered part done, we're going to go ahead and move on to painting the edges. For this, you're going to need a flat brush, and you're going to just use black paint to paint the edges. If you don't paint the edges, it's going to look pretty obvious. So we're going to go ahead and paint the edge, and as we're doing that, we're going to pull the paint forward over the front of the piece. We'll just do little sections at a time. So as you can see here, I paint a little bit of the edge, and then while my brush is still wet, pull it forward to the front, and that gives it that nice defined look around the edges without having to be an outline. Okay, now let's take a look and see what we think. See, I love that outline. It just brings it all together. So now we're going to do this around the entire piece. It's going to be a little time consuming. Don't lose your patience. By the time you're done, you're going to be an expert in these little wispies. You want to make sure you don't get too much paint on your brush, so that's why I suggest you go in little sections. You paint that edge first, and as you get finished with that little edge, while you've got your brush a little bit cleaned off, you just bring around your wispies. That way your brush is not completely loaded with paint when you're doing your wispies. As you can tell, I have very technical terms such as wispies. You can call it whatever you like. Okay, so now we're at a part where I need to make sure to let you know that even though we're around this curve, you're going to want to make sure that you don't curve your wispies. You're going to want to keep those lines that you're bringing over to the front of the piece straight. You're going to want to keep them horizontal, the same as the dry brush lines. Otherwise, it's going to look a little weird. So you want to keep these little wispies you're doing right here straight as you can to match up with those dry brush lines that you added earlier. Just keep that in mind as you go around the entire piece. Okay, so the next step, we've got to be careful right here. We're going to have a natural urge to bring that brush in just like we've been doing, but because this line runs parallel to our dry brush lines, we're going to want to make sure that we stay focused and we keep our lines going the same direction. So it's going to be a little bit different than your natural brush stroke that we've been doing so far, where we pull that around to the front. You're just going to want to stay parallel with those dry brush lines. Okay, so now we're back over to this side, so we're going to paint this edge again and start pulling our wispies back over to the front of the piece, just like we were a while ago. Okay, so here we are at this chin. It's going to be very similar to the base of the neck, where we're going to have to really focus and not bring the brush in the wrong direction. Okay, so you can see here, if I bring it a little closer, how those lines are staying the same direction. Okay, so now it's time to work on the crown. You can see there's a lot of nooks and crannies, so I'm going to be switching back and forth between a flat brush and a smaller round brush to get down into some of those smaller areas. So you may want to do the same. Okay, so hang in there. You're almost there. We're almost done. I know this has been quite a process. Doing those edges and bringing around your wispies is not for the faint of heart. So just hang in there. You're almost done. You'll be really glad you did when you were finished. Okay, so now we're getting to the final piece. Notice I saved it for the end. It's this little edge right here, and then the inside edge. That's going to be harder to get to, so you're going to have to switch to a smaller brush, but I didn't want to do all that switching at the beginning, so we saved it to the end. Okay, so now we're at this inside edge, and it's just so tiny. So I think I'm going to go ahead and switch brushes because we've worked too hard to come this far and get too much paint on there and make a mess with our black. So I went ahead and switched brushes. It is so much easier to fit in there. It doesn't flow quite as easily as the flat brush does, but it fits, so that's the key. Okay, we're all done. Ta-da! A beautiful weathered little princess. You can write on here anything you want. I think I'm going to write Hello Gorgeous on mine. But feel free to customize yours any way. You can put your daughter's name or your granddaughter's name. It'll be a beautiful, beautiful little door hanger for their room. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you watching the video. I hope it helped. I've really enjoyed our time. And we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.